Welcome to Physicians Keepers. Each episode features honest conversations with physicians, sharing moments that shaped them, challenged them, or taught them something worth passing on. These stories come from every corner of a physician's life: the clinic, OR, family, finances, mental health, leadership, and personal growth. If a story can help another doctor feel seen or strengthened, it belongs here. It's about honesty, courage, and community true storytelling. If you are looking for connection or a reminder that you are not alone in navigating this profession, you are in the right place. Hello and welcome to another episode of Physicians Keepers. Either you're listening to this on the podcast or you're watching on YouTube, I'm excited to have you here today to share this conversation. And we have a very special guest today. I have Dr. Rhonda Mattox, and thank you so much, Dr. Mattox, for agreeing to be a guest on this podcast. And I know that we're going to get a lot of valuable insights from you today, so appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and just read Dr. Mattox's bio. She is Dr. Rhonda Mattox, an MD. She is a board-certified psychiatrist and a diplomate of the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology, with more than 2 decades of experience in direct patient care. She speaks at the intersection of mental health, media, policy, faith, and voice, helping audiences understand how silence shapes lives and how reclaiming one's voice can transform them. Today, she explores how silence often becomes a learned survival strategy, especially for women of color and high-achieving professionals. So there's a whole lot more to you about Dr. Mattox, and we will get to it as we converse. But thank you so much for being here today. And, you know, I've said my piece about you, but how else would you go about introducing yourself?
I am definitely a person of faith, and I believe in that it is important for me to help people align themselves with what they consider their purpose-driven lives and giving them their voice back. So often we learn to be quiet and just try to get along. And when we do that, we really don't give the world the benefit of what we have to offer. My background is that I grew up in Maya Angelou's home, and the book that she wrote about, and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, that is the house that I lived in. And a part of her story is that when she was 8 years old, she was subjected to the unthinkable by her mother's boyfriend. And when she shared what had happened, the man went to jail and they let him out within a day or two. But when she told the man's name, the man ended up dead. And so for the next 5 years, she didn't speak publicly because she realized that she thought her voice had the power to kill. And I reflect on what my life would have been like if she continued to be mute and to be afraid to use her voice. And so often we are afraid to use our voices, but, you know, she went on to become an icon and really, you know, the auntie of us all. Yes. So I want to help women, you know, reclaim their voice and use it for good.
That's really awesome. So how does that look like in the workplace where, you know, as physicians, a lot of times we are told, hey, come in, do the job, put your head down and, you know, roll with the punches. How does that eventually build up into causing environments that are, you know, toxic for us, where we feel like if we speak out or if we say something that doesn't agree with us, we feel like we're not being part of the team or we're not, you know, getting on with the program as others are. And especially for women, right? You know, it factors a lot into us where then that, you know, discussion comes where you're just being emotional about this. You know, this is an emotional response, but it really isn't.
I want to make sure I understand the question because I started listening and then I didn't hear I'm not sure that I heard the question. Would you repeat that question for me?
So I said, how does that look like for, especially you talked about women of color, where you are in an environment that does not support you vocalizing what your needs are, vocalizing what you're not comfortable with, and then you are told to get on with the program and just put your head down, do the work. How does it then play out in what does it do to an individual when that's the environment that you work in?
I think that's a nuanced question. And many times when we don't feel supported or when we feel misinterpreted and misunderstood, we start keeping our thoughts to ourselves because we realize this is not a safe place for us to speak. And each time we do that, it's almost like we're violating our own trust. We're betraying ourselves. And you can look up and you can find yourself being anxious, practicing defensively, not simply just practicing medicine defensively, but also interacting with your coworkers defensively as well. And I think when you start doing that, that doesn't just remain compartmentalized to your job. It can spill over. I can recall a time working in an environment that, my health, I started gaining a lot of weight because when you're stressed, what do I do when I'm stressed but eat? If you're not sleeping well, you're staying up late and your cortisol levels are spiking and you are getting more anxious. And so I saw pictures of myself and I realized I didn't have time to go to the stylist. I was gaining weight. I was snappier with family. And so it spills over into other parts of your life. And then you can wake up and realize, who is this person? And I'm not practicing what I've been preaching. I'm not practicing what I've been telling my patients. And so at some point, you have to identify what it is that you are willing to continue to take.
That's pretty awesome in terms of how it then spills out, not just from like how you describe how it spills out, not just from the workplace, but then it starts to affect every other facet of your life. So you're not getting that satisfaction from your job, and now your family's not getting the best version of you because of that. So how do you encourage, as physicians, we're high performers, right? And in some specialties, there's always, based on the high pressure, there's always some degree of anxiety that goes with the work in the first place. Mm-hmm. When do we get to that point when we understand, okay, I need to address this. Like, this needs to be addressed, especially because for some people it's a badge of honor. That high stress is like, I work in a high stress environment. I'm a high stress. They think it's a badge of honor to be constantly stressed and not knowing the damaging effect it does, not just to their health, but to every other area of their performance. How do you, as a psychiatrist, how do you get to that point where you draw their focus and be like, look, this is a problem. It doesn't have to be this way. How do we tackle this?
Now, are you asking that question from how do you tell yourself that, or are you asking that from how do you navigate that with your coworkers? I want to make sure I answer.
How you would tell yourself that.
Okay. So let me just tell you, this joy that I bring looks like it's just, flows freely. But I've been really intentional about crafting an emotional joy wellness team for myself. And so that includes a psychiatrist, a pastor, my pup, my family, and my community that makes me laugh. Okay. And you'll notice that I said psychiatry first. I'm a psychiatrist, but I make sure that I have other individuals who have who are unbiased, who don't stand to benefit from whatever choices that I make one way or the other, that I can share my heart with. And then they will understand, because you don't see a psychiatrist, or my recommendation to those who are listening is that you don't see a therapist or psychiatrist when you hit rock bottom. Like, that's not when you go looking for one. Get one now while you can be intentional about who you work with, so that they feel aligned with you, so that that you can choose one that works for you. If you wait until you're at rock bottom, then what you end up doing is getting whoever has the first available appointment.
Sure.
And they don't know your patterns. They don't know your history. So they're seeing you when you're at your most vulnerable. And then and I won't say you're stuck with them, but you are, it's almost like you've reached your max. And so now you're like trying to get everything out. And it's not the best presentation of you. And so my thought is once every 3 months, one of a few things will happen. You'll have some stress at work, some stress with your partner, stress with your children. Someone will have died, or some kind of conflict in your inner circle, your friend group, or something like that. And even if you just see your person once every 3 months or once a month or what have you, you have someone that you can talk to who can ask you questions. And ideally, the therapist or the psychiatrist you get, they don't give you the answers. They ask you the questions and they pull it out. So for me, I already have in place right now a person that I can talk to that is trustworthy, who knows my background. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that is one of the first things that I will recommend for any high achieving person of color who is doing it for the first time or who is working in an environment where they are the absolute minority. Having that person really helps keep you grounded and helps you in real time pick away the layers of what's going on in real time. The other thing is pay attention to your body. Your body definitely keeps score. And when you find that you're getting anxious when you drive into the parking lot, when the thought of going back to work is like on Sunday night, you're thinking about and you can't wait until the weekend and you can't wait until vacation, that is a signal that to you that all is not well. Yeah. And when I'm at work, I pay attention to how I feel when I'm around people. There are some toxic people that you work with that you don't feel safe with. Don't just push that to the side. Start thinking about why that is and what that means and what it is that you can do, if that's even possible, to make this situation better. And sometimes there's nothing, there's not as much that you could do as you like, but identifying that.
That sounds pretty well structured. And I like the way that you mentioned you're a psychiatrist and you realize the importance of having a psychiatrist.
Because everybody brings stuff your way. And you know this, Dr. Allie, as there are the strong friends and then there are the strong friends. And frequently when people call us, they are not calling to see how we're doing. They're calling to release and to get our counsel. And yes. The pandemic really highlighted the plight of many of my strong Black women friends, because normally we would be able to, all of us are not going through at the same time. And so if one of us is stressed, they could fall back on us. But all of us were losing people. And sometimes it was, you lose someone and then you lose someone again. And before you could grieve, someone else had passed. And so we no longer had the capacity to hear from others. And so I was just like, I can't answer my phone, because every time I answer my phone, I was working all day and then I would be on the phone hearing about other people's stuff at night. And I did not have the capacity to do that and be well.
Oh, wow. Wow. And it's a thing that I think a lot of physicians need to learn how to embrace pretty well, to say we need to be vulnerable enough to seek help.
Yeah.
Because there's that stigma. And we talk to patients about this, but we fail to look at the fact that we are also doing the same thing. We say, do not be ashamed to seek help, take medications. But then when it comes to us, then we're like, what would this look like if I go tell my my leaders or the administration staff that I'm dealing with anxiety, that I need to take a step back, how would that reflect on, my professional life? Will they see me as someone who is still capable? Will they see me as someone who can take on more tasks? And so we find ourselves in that pattern where we know, and this is talking from a personal experience, right? Because I battled with anxiety when I was in residency. Environment was very hostile to me, but I felt that I'm a physician, I should be able to be tough and handle this. And me going out to tell them that, look, I'm dealing with this, they might say, oh, she's not a capable resident.
Yeah.
She's not, I don't think she has the stuff to
And
be in this
you don't
program.
have to tell them that though.
Yeah.
Like you can take it, for instance, if you needed to take a medical leave, you can work with your HR people to take that medical leave. You do not have to you don't have to disclose what the medical leave is associated with.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily encourage people to share the specifics of their healthcare journey with their supervisor or whomever.
Yeah.
That's not what I necessarily do. But what I will say is that when you are in that environment and you are crystal clear that it is hostile and that it's toxic, you don't know where you can be vulnerable or if you should be. And my recommendation really is, I remember one of my mentees was joining a particular residency program. And I told her, these people are going to tell you all of their business. Don't you do the same? Okay. So you call a friend in another state, you talk to your therapist, you talk to your psychiatrist, but right now you are friendly, but you're going to be on wards together. They will consider you their competition. And the things that you have shared with them in confidence when you were having a good place will be used against you. And she did not listen to me. And she returned to tell me, Dr. Mattox, you were certainly right. So I am friendly, but I'm not a friend.
Yeah.
Now, you're talking to a psychiatrist who has been intentional about boundaries. And most people in different professions, or a lot of people in different professions, are not intentional about their boundaries. And so it's blurry. But I have learned through trial and error, through weeping and gnashing of teeth, that it is ideal for me to be friendly and not a friend of most of the colleagues that I work with at work.
That's a really good boundary setting lesson. Mm-hmm. It really is, because sometimes that's one of our pitfalls is we don't know, how to set boundaries. I mean, vulnerability is okay, to a certain degree, but then you have to know the room that you're in to be able to share that, and it's a lesson that a lot of us learn after we've been bitten. That oops.
I'm vulnerable in safe places. You have to earn my vulnerability after you've proven yourself time and time again to be a safe place. And many times when we're in residency or when we're in the workplace, we will just gift it away and then it will come back and burn us.
So that like I said, you're preaching to the choir when it comes to that, and having to learn, when to bridle my tongue and not to get myself to that place of overwhelmed. And then you're oversharing, and a lot of that information, the people you're sharing it with, do not necessarily have your best interest at heart. It all boils down to who, such information, if it's not shared in a safe place, can be weaponized against you.
That's perfect language for it.
Yes, it can definitely be weaponized against you. So from in your pretty much your vast experience from a psychiatry standpoint, where do you see physicians that are battling and dealing with anxiety? What outlets would you say outside of the workplace that they need to focus on? Because you just mentioned that sometimes you're not able to control the environment that's causing it. Like you may feel helpless. I'm like, okay, this is my job. This is, I don't have an option to switch roles or switch jobs right now. What other outlets can they use? I mean, we talked about seeing someone, but other outlets that you think would work to help them manage that?
Yeah. So a few things, I think, building a tribe of people that you can trust outside of the workplace, of
Yep.
course. Exercise for sure. Walking in nature, being intentional about getting good sleep, and being intentional about not using coping strategies that can get you in trouble later, specifically drinking,
Yeah.
smoking, those kinds of things. I am a lifelong journaler. I find that when I journal and I brain dump into my journal, I get it out of my head. In my head, it's like the boogeyman. But when I put it on paper and offer it as my prayer to God, if you will, then I find that I can get strategies and structure. I wrote a book, Take 5, Pathway to Peace, a 40-day journaling experience. And I made the 40 days because you think 40 days in the wilderness or whatever.
Yeah.
But my thought was, as I am releasing, as I'm releasing my heart, and I would frequently journal right after I prayed. And when I was sitting still, like sometimes we like pray and then we just like leave. I would pray and then be intentional about sitting still and then writing down some of the things that I would feel like I heard in my spirit, right? And those would be frequently those would be strategies of things that I wouldn't have come up on my own, how to deal with stuff. Or I would see people's faces and realize maybe I'd hurt someone's feeling. And so I'm writing these things down, but I am also brain dumping on what it is I'm concerned about. And so after I get it on paper, it doesn't feel as big. It doesn't feel as heavy, and I would feel lighter. And there's some research associated with the value of journaling for reducing anxiety, the value of journaling and expressive writing for enhancing your mood. And so for me, journaling is definitely that thing. You heard me speak of my faith. Honestly, my faith and my community are two of the most important ways for me to handle that. And I'm also a laugher. And so I am intentional about creating opportunities for me to laugh. My TV is always on something called Dry Bar, which is a comedy that does not have all of the all of the excess sex and all that stuff in it. But so laughter doth good like a medicine, and there's no side effects except maybe these wrinkle lines, and if you laugh too hard, maybe you tinkle or something. But
those menopausal issues.
Yes, so you want to make sure that you are creating opportunities to laugh, opportunities for community, and that you are I'm going to say it like this, that you're not so prideful that you cannot invite discussion around this. Because so often we don't talk because we have always dreamt of being doctors. And so in our minds, this was going to be our dream job. And our parents, maybe, or the people around us, they are so proud of us. Yeah. And so we don't want, they see us as like a superstar. And it's hard to say, the people at work treat me like I'm nothing.
Yeah.
Or I don't bring value. That's embarrassing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. It seems like your faith has been a very integral part for you in just navigating life and its challenges. So I think that's very important, because you have to have something else outside of your job that
Mm-hmm.
gives you a why to, wake you up in the morning and to get you looking forward to something. And you mentioned your book. Where can we get a copy of this for those who are dealing with anxiety and they want to explore what journaling will look like for them and not have to repress their thoughts? Where can we get access to it?
Yes. So if you want an autographed copy from me, go to my website, drrhondamattox.org, DRRHONDAMAT is in Tom, TOX.org. But if you have Prime and you're like, I want it in a day or two and I don't care anything about your autograph, go to Amazon and just type in Rhonda Mattox, Take Five Pathway to Peace, and you can get it there. And I'm going to tell you what, as a lifelong journaler, the thing that I like about this is it helps you in different ways. So there's a section in there to where there are physical symptoms, and you're checking whether you had these symptoms in this day, so that when you
Yeah.
go to your doctor and your doctor says, hey, how have you been? And what are we likely to say? Fine, even though you're not
Yeah.
fine. There's a
Yeah.
section for before you go to the doctor, you can be completing that. So you can tell them how much chest pain you've had, how many nightmares you've had, that kind of stuff. But then there's this other place that invites you, and it's called Peace Uploading, that invites you to be intentional about writing down what you're thankful for. Then there's a place for you to just write down, just brain dump.
Yeah.
When you're praying and as you're about to pray, like all this stuff comes to your mind, you can just brain dump, right? So the different sections in the book, it's called journaling, but the truth is really not. It's like journaling on steroids. And it's
Yeah.
a really, really, really good book. And thank you for asking about it.
Oh, awesome. I'll definitely put the link in the show notes so that anyone who wants to have access to it, I have a copy myself, just FYI, and it's a really awesome book. A lot of thought and effort, especially a person of faith, put into that, and scriptures to guide you. So thank you so much for your contribution to that, Dr. Maddox. Now, as part of the other things that you do, I do know you're a coach, Rod, and you, yes, you're a coach, and then you also, I know you were pretty high in the Toastmasters, and as one of the things that I see that you do is help people find their voice. How not to remain silent. What does that process look like? So someone is saying, I have a lot of things to say, or a lot of things being repressed. Like, how does that happen where people find their voice? What does that
Yeah.
look like?
So I really start with why they have muted themselves to begin with. And so sometimes it's out of trauma, out of fear, or what have you. And we deal with that part that has caused them to silence themselves. And then we pull out the lessons learned, even when people are grieving loved ones. They focus so much on what they've lost, but I'm intentional about what remains and what lessons that you get from that. And often when people have gone through things, they will say, like you did, I don't want anyone else to go through this, or I want to be a support for someone who's going through this. And so we map out what it is that they learned and what it is they wish to transmit to others. And then after we understand what that is, we work our way backwards in sharing their story and also monetizing their story. Because my thing is, we are going to pivot from pain to purpose to
Yeah.
profit. And
Yeah.
we're going to, and not like pimp out your stuff, but if you've gone through this and you're healthier, and you have some wisdom that you can impart to people to help them say, hey, there's a pitfall that way. Don't go
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And so we will map out how you can use your story. And there will be places that you will share your story for free because you want that. But then there
Yeah.
are other places that you can monetize this. And there are audiences of people that need what it is that you have to say. And so I help people get into corporate, get into higher education, get into nonprofits, and deliver keynote speeches, or help them start coaching or write their book or what have you. And I say help, I mean the gentle nudge to this core message that you have
Yeah.
is too valuable for you to take it to your grave. How
Yeah.
can we support others in their journey?
That's awesome. I believe everyone has a story. I believe that
Absolutely.
everyone has a story, and a lot of people think my story is insignificant, but it may just be exactly what someone else needs. And as people who are we're supposed to be business minded and to a certain degree, the one of the ways that I've come to accept that selling your story, or not selling, like you said, not in a sleazy way, the only way to amplify your story is it costs money to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not utilizing it in that sense, you're acting at a disservice to those who your story would have reached. And
Yeah.
so you're thinking, oh well, all I just want to do is,
I just want to help somebody.
I just
And I mean, and what I will say is so often we are running ourselves ragged. And for me, the entire reason for monetizing your gift is so that you don't have to get burnt out working 3 or 4 jobs because you're trying to help people on weekends. You're not getting paid for that. And then you're not getting rest, and then you're exhausted. And so, I consider, and a lot of times people will consider it self-promotion, and they love I'm the best kept secret. Well, here's the thing. There are people who need the message that you have, and you don't have the confidence to deliver it, and you're not comfortable talking about money. I help people get comfortable talking about money. Help people who have money ick issues. I will help them strategize ways to where even if they're uncomfortable talking about money, they don't even have to talk about money. We put some systems in place so they don't even have to talk about money. But the other thing is, understand this. You don't want to put your light under a barrel.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the person who, particularly if you're a person of faith. Do you remember what happened to the guy who hid his talents and didn't multiply them? I don't want to be considered a wicked servant. I want to get my stuff out there, because I remember this time, and I don't think we knew each other then, but I did a commercial, and the commercial I almost didn't do. And the commercial went like this. I'm Dr. Rhonda Mattox. I'm a resident psychiatrist. I didn't choose psychiatry. I was born into it. When my mother was pregnant with me, she had such severe depression that she attempted suicide. We lived. Now I devote my life to helping others prevent the tragedy of suicide. That commercial almost never made it to air. I was talking to an attending about a suicide talk that I'd given, sharing how I had shared that. And the person asked me if I would make a commercial about it. No, was my first response.
Yeah.
And so she was like, well, would you at least consider it? And I said, that's not my story to tell. And so I talked to my family. My family gave me permission to share, and I shared that story. Fast forward, my real estate agent tells me I saved her life. I'm just like, I haven't seen you in 3 years. How did I save your life? And so she tells me that her brother had died by suicide in an awful way. She found him. She couldn't get the images out of her head, and she was planning suicide. Gun in hand, she flings a prayer to heaven and says, God, if it's not your will, send me a sign. And then that commercial comes on. And she hears my voice in her bedroom, and she takes it as a sign. I get goosebumps every time I tell that story, because I understand how close I came to not telling that story. Number one, because I just been raised. We don't air our dirty laundry. We don't tell family business. Yeah. But the word of God tells us that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so had I kept that to myself, she might have gone on with that suicide.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we are sharing our stories are also letting people become free to share their stories. And
Oh, wow.
as they release those stories, there is a healing that begins when you can tell your story in a safe place and not be judged. And
Oh,
that community is what you're creating. And so thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alley, for creating that community for
well,
physicians.
well, thank you so much. I appreciate all the wonderful work that you do for physicians and for the community, for people of color, and for people of faith. You are pretty busy in all those aspects. Awesome. So I would put in your coaching links also in the show notes. So anyone who wants to reach out to you for some expert coaching, yes, and even your LinkedIn, all the contacts. But if you are listening to us and you have a story to tell, you just heard how powerful Dr. Mattox's revelation was about her story, how it got out, how to save someone's. Your story as a physician can definitely encourage someone else. So send me a message, let's get you on. Let's talk about your journey. Let's indeed be a physician's keeper. And you have been an awesome physician's keeper today, Dr. Rhonda. And I look forward to having you probably some other time when we can have a lot more topics to talk about. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Physicians Keepers. I hope today's conversation gave you something useful to carry into your life or practice. If it resonated, share it with another physician who might need it. And if you have a story that could help someone else, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media or send me an email. See you in the next episode.